So why don't we start with Paget? You've been kind of active around kind of Asian American issues before Yang, right?
Yeah, I mean, I produced 2 seasons of a series that I wrote and I starred in, and it was really important for me to have proper Asian American representation in those. And this was before Crazy Rich Asians, so I wasn't just jumping on the Crazy Rich Asians, craze, because I saw how diminished like Asian male representation was in the media in particular, and I just thought that was really unfair. And so when I created something, I wanted it to basically like add something positive, add something new. And so, yeah, I am very aware of Asian American issues and Asian Americans being silenced, being like thrown away a lot of the time, just not having a voice, so yes, I am I'm more sensitized to this. And I also grew up in a predominantly white hometown. And a lot of my childhood friends are Caucasian, the majority of them are. And I used to get teased a lot. And I used to always have to like stand up for myself, and not a whole lot of other people would do that with me. So it was like very me against like everyone else a lot of the time. So it is a sensitive topic for me, because it's hard to imagine how that didn't inform my insecurities at that time, how long it took me to feel like a comfortable, secure, confident person, having to deal with that in my childhood. And so, yeah, this is an important topic for me because it's personal. And anyway, yeah, so you go ahead. But yes, I have been involved.
Yeah. Before I share my side, what part of the country did you grow up? Did you grow up in the West Coast or?
Yeah, no, in Los Angeles, but so we didn't like live in Malibu, but I went to high school at Malibu High. So it's a very small high school. It's very cliquish. It was like Mean Girls. I don't know if you guys saw that movie.
Oh.
It was very much like that. And I was like one of maybe 3 Asians in my year, but I was the only one who would actually stand up for myself. So it felt very lonely in that regard. But yeah. What about you?
Yeah. So I grew up in New Jersey, in northern New Jersey, and generally in the whole town. The first town we lived in, there was us and there was like one other family that was Asian.
Yeah. Wow.
And then in the second town, like there were like 2 or 3. I think there was like a Filipino family and maybe like a Japanese one. So it's a near and dear topic to me as well, because I remember always feeling like a permanent foreigner, even though I was born in the United States and my parents are citizens, and but I remember growing up, and I shared this on my like sort of Yang story or whatever. But I grew up where the most popular movie when I was in like junior high was 16 Candles.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And so like Long Duck Dong was something I was called a lot, right? And then I also remember going to stores, and I would just be walking with my brother or with my mom, and then we'd walk by strangers and they would just sort of like mock us, making like kung fu noises or like fake like sounds that they think sounds like Chinese, like, and you're like, it's like, dude, you don't even know me, like, leave me alone. And so yeah, it was not easy growing up. I think the people growing up now, especially in certain like more diverse parts of the country, have it better than maybe in the past, and hopefully it'll get better still. But one interesting thing was like, I think it wasn't until the 60s that Chinese people of Chinese background were allowed to vote, because there was this Chinese Exclusion Act where a lot of Asian people were not able to own property and stuff, which is kind of funny because you never hear about that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because the Asian American community has not been politically active.
Right.
has not made a lot of noise, and the general modus operandi has been like, oh, just put your head down, work hard, and don't worry about all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think, and I certainly don't want to fixate on this, but I do think media representation shapes how people think about different groups.
It 100%
right?
does. Yeah.
And so it's like, I remember for my study abroad year in college, I went to Hong Kong for a year. And it was so weird seeing ads with Asian male models, and you turn on the news and the anchor is some Asian guy, you know, and an Asian girl, but like I wasn't used to seeing that, right? Or the CEOs of companies were people that look like me, you know? And so that was kind of cool. And then when I came back, I decided like, oh, I definitely want to live in a part of the country where there's more kind of equal representation or like more diversity. So that's why we ended up living in Seattle for like 15 years, because it has a pretty strong, and at that time we had an Asian American governor, which was Gary Locke. It was the first time. Yeah. And so that was super cool. So, you know, there's a lot of things to be optimistic about. But at the same time, like, we're not sort of post-racial yet.
No. And I don't even think that that's like necessarily the goal. I feel like it's just a matter of like, it's literally just like, don't dehumanize someone because of their race. Like, we have differences. I look different than you, look different than the other next person. It's not about like saying, okay, let's all be colorblind. That's never going to happen. And I don't think that's the goal. I think it's about celebrating people's differences and recognizing the differences and then fully accepting them as your equal. Like, that is what it's about for me. I don't want people to be colorblind. I just want them to respect the different colors, you know, and treat them as equals, like in every regard. That's it. That's all I'm saying, you know? Yeah.
So, you know, what's been really kind of crazy about timing of news events is, for me, I shot this my Yang story thing a few days ago, like a couple days ago. And my angle was like, my Yang story is, I think this so cool that we have an Asian American getting this far in consideration for the Democratic Party nomination. And I said, you know, growing up, like, this would have been unheard of. And like, I found this picture of like the Reagan administration, and it was just mostly like almost all white men. And you know, like, wouldn't that be cool if we had someone like Andrew Yang in there with a really diverse cabinet? And I also said, like, my kids, I have two boys, 9 and 11, and they think that Andrew Yang is like, they like him, they love him, but they don't know how unusual it is.
Yes, I remember you saying that.
Right?
Yeah.
They like, this dude is in the top 5 or 6 right now out of a field of 24, came from nowhere. And in my opinion, is the only one that's kind of moving up. Okay, with Warren as well. Yeah. But that's a pretty good sort of like, he's already breaking ceilings.
Yes.
And so what was funny was then when we were talking about this stream, I did a tweet saying, hey, Paget's coming on the live stream. What do you want us to talk about? And someone said, oh, can you talk about Shane Gillis or Gillis? And I was like, Shane who? And so, you know, I fired up the Google and found the articles.
Yep.
And then at first I was like, oh, that's annoying. Like, some guy saying some slurs, like, but to be honest, I wasn't like shocked. And then I clicked a little further and found the videos that he recorded of himself with his buddy Matt. And when you watch them talk about Asian people in a really dehumanizing and hateful way, and it's not even part of a bit, it's just two angry people kind of pooping on another race.
Yeah.
And sort of, dehumanizing them and marginalizing them and complaining like, oh, I hate it when Chinese people try and speak English. And it's like,
yes. It was so dehumanizing in its nature. It was, I mean, it wasn't even like, here's the thing, like if it was even just saying like, doing a broad generalization and that being, racist and everything, but it was purely out of a lot of ignorance, you know, and you could see that it was out of ignorance. They just haven't had much contact with Asian Americans and things like that. But I sensed something more vile underneath, like an undertone, like, of that whole conversation, that like, it just underlined a vileness that underlined the entire conversation, right? That they knew that they had so much contempt for Asians that they could say like, oh, it's so, I hate hearing them trying to speak English. Like, do you know what I mean? And I just felt like and his apology, whatever the apology was, it was not an apology. It was him making an excuse. It was him saying, look, I'm a comedian. I'm going to try one this and that. Nah, if it doesn't hit, then whatever. But like, that's what happens. And it's like, you don't need to go, like, there's plenty of amazing comedians who do not dehumanize. So it's actually showing a weakness in his comedy. But I don't feel comfortable, okay, like having him be on one of the most culturally influential TV shows that people watch, like being represented up there without having apologized, without showing any sort of understanding or remorse, and just letting him go like scot-free without actually having to like come to terms with what he actually was saying and doing, and he has a long history of this. He got fired from a comedy club because of this, because of all of his homophobic, transphobic, all of this like horrible stuff, right? So he's clearly not apologetic. And I do not think that that should just go completely like unpunished, at least like by mainstream media. Yes, rewarded, right? Rewarded. And so that's why I have a huge problem with him here. I think he should move on with his life. I don't wish anything bad on him. He should have forgiveness if he kind of like, actually takes back what he says in a sincere way. But he should not be then one of the cast members of Saturday Night Live. I do not think that's okay. And they already said that they were going to fire him. And now it looks like they might not fire him because of what Andrew Yang said. And I wouldn't believe for a second if he said, yeah, I'm really sorry, like shouldn't have done it, because he has a long history of it. And if you listen to it, you just know, you can tell the difference between ignorance and just flat out like actual like racist sort of dehumanizing sort of like, I don't know, thinking toward an entire race, right? I mean, I don't know. That's my opinion on it. So I didn't like it.
Yeah, no, I also didn't like it. I also think that Saturday Night Live has such a huge influence and a huge platform. And there are so many comedians struggling every day trying to get that opportunity, that you could find another person who's super funny and doesn't record podcasts just slamming a whole race on a regular basis. That he shouldn't get the role. Now, I'm not saying like he should be excommunicated from the country, but it's like, look, there's a lot of people applying for this job. We're only going to pick the person that we think is best for the show. You have a lot of weird stuff in your background that is going to, number one, alienate a lot of viewers. It's going to affect our advertisers. And frankly, as a show, we don't agree with that kind of humor. Mm-hmm. We don't think it's okay to just slam an entire group in the way that you've done. And I think the thing that really broke the camel's back for me, because I'm generally like a libertarian, so I don't really want to get too like overly prescriptive.
Yeah.
But when I saw that video of the Skank podcast or something, and they were kind of like mocking a person with Down syndrome, and saying, oh, you know, we should just like, you know, finish them off early when they're young and all this kind of stuff. To me, I felt like, all right, like this is not a bit. This is not like, look, you could say Chappelle really pushes boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that he does it in a way where like it's at least a well executed bit. And he's also pretty open about calling out everybody.
Yeah.
And he's not and then for him, whenever he does his Asian jokes, like I know his wife is Asian, so I'm like, well, you a little bit of like it's kind of almost self-deprecating because he's, you know, he's clearly has awareness of Asian Americans.
Right.
And whereas I think, and I don't want to sound like I'm apologizing for Shane, because to be clear, I do not think he should be on SNL, and I hope they remove him and make that clear. But I do also feel like this guy probably grew up with very little interaction with Asian Americans. And his only interaction has probably been in like restaurants with people who are recent immigrants who he had difficulty communicating with. And he's probably got his own demons and he's feeling bad about himself, and it makes him feel better to kind of put other people down. And no one's perfect, and we all go through our stuff, but that doesn't mean you get to be on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Again, if it was one conversation, but he has such a long history of it, and obviously people have told him like that makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. What you're saying is not like funny, and it's also just not right or okay. And you shouldn't be spewing out these kinds of ideas and thoughts and things like that to the public and like making people the butt of your jokes. He's been told this apparently for years. And if he can't somehow course correct a little bit, then I just don't see him really reforming, if I'm being honest. Or even like, here's the thing, he can say this in his private life, you know, with no one around, can't control that. So go off, say it in your private life, don't record it, don't put it out, don't put it as part of your comedy skits. But once you do that, it is open, it is fair game for criticism. And you are going to be a figurehead, especially if you're on Saturday Night Live. And I guess what bothered me a little bit, and I know people are just going to hate on me for this, and it's fine, is that, in my opinion, I think it was amazing that Angie Yang was like, let's meet up. I am open to having a conversation with you. I think that is exactly what we need more of in this country. We need to have more open conversations with the other side if we don't agree with each other. I would love to see that, by the way. I would love to see them having a real conversation. I wish he didn't comment on the fact that he should definitely not get fired from SNL. I wish he just did not comment on whether or not he would get fired from SNL. I wish because he is, but calling that shot for all of the other Asian Americans in this country who are not running for president or who have not yet figured everything out, right? Who are not yet adults, for Asian Americans who are still in college and high school, you know, growing up, and who are going to actually watch Saturday Night Live and see this guy's history. And, you know, I can't support that because, you know, Andrew Yang, he doesn't himself have to deal with it. But what about all of the people who are going to be like, all the kids who are growing up and going to be watching Saturday Night Live, knowing that there is someone who is an actively like hateful, racist person on the show, and people are like applauding him? I don't know. That's just my opinion. I just don't think he should have called that shot, I guess. And apparently it looks like he might not actually get fired. Actually, I think because of Andrew Yang's tweet. And that's what I hoped or wished, is that didn't happen, that it was more decided by the people. But yeah.
So this is where I know you and I have a slightly different opinion. For Andrew, I kind of feel like he did what he had to do, which is he basically said, hey, I've been the recipient of a lot of that kind of talk all my life. It's hurtful. It's dehumanizing. It's not acceptable. Shane, I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah.
But I think he needed to be careful about not sort of really hanging his hat on this and going really far and saying, you know, Shane, you must be fired, because I think it would turn off a lot of potential voters.
Yeah, I don't think he
right?
should have said that. He definitely shouldn't have commented on whether or not he should get fired. I think if he just said, I would love to have an open conversation with you. I don't support like using like, you know, hateful language as part of your comedy, as part of comedy in general. That would have been perfect. It would have been great for his campaign, right? It would have opened up that dialogue. It'd be great exposure anyway. But for him to then say he shouldn't get fired and to weigh in on that, like, I guess that is my only issue with it, because I think there are so many other Asian Americans who feel the way I did watching all of those things, all those videos, not just one instance, all of those videos, who are like, wow, this guy is really dehumanizing us, and he's putting all this stuff out there for everyone to see, and he's been doing this for years, and like he's going to be like continued. I don't know. That was my issue, but I think yeah, but whatever. I mean, we're all going to, you know, disagree with some of the things he says, or some of us are going to, and that's just one of the things that I disagree with.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people out there who are maybe thinking to themselves, like, come on, people are comedians, they make jokes all the time. You know, people used to make jokes about every group, blah, blah, blah. That's like comedy. I would encourage you to actually watch some of Shane's stuff, because it's not like, oh, people are saying, oh, Chinese people, they can't drive. It's not like that.
Yeah. Yeah. If they say Chinese people can't drive, I'd be like, okay, kind of inappropriate, but like, you know what, whatever. Like, okay, it's not the same as literally saying like Asian people are retards. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not the same freaking thing. So yeah, people, I just don't have actually watched his videos.
So let me ask you, let me zoom out for a minute, because I think Shane is representative of another trend where he even himself said in an article that what he has found is that you can never make fun of like the police. You can't make fun of like certain groups, but you can always make fun of Asians. That's the last group that any comedian, like, it's free, it's open season.
Yep.
And I think he's actually reflecting the reality of our society. That you know, because if he had taped a podcast talking about what he thought of Hispanics or Muslims or gays or women, and he did it in the same way he talks about Asians, like, oh, I hate them, I can't even like to look at them, all this shit.
And then but also, did you get the sexualization, like the
let's go
Asian
on
women?
Patreon and raise money, and Matt, you and me are going to go to Thailand.
How is that okay? But anyway, okay.
Yeah, completely. Like,
but anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, and when my Wendy, my wife, watched that, like, I had to like tell her to like, hey, dude, just breathe. It's just some idiot on the internet. Like, she's like, we gotta do something. This is ridiculous. So I think he does touch on something where if you were to say really hateful things about Jewish people or about Black people, there's a certain understanding that there's a clear line. You do not cross it. And I don't think there's an understanding for Asians. Like, do you think the comedians or the media know what is like, what can't you do to Asians?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, also the fact that he even stated that he's like, we found out that it's okay to be racist against Asians. He even himself said that he's racist against Asians. Like, he even said that. That's kind of problematic that he's actually even circulating that it's okay to be racist to Asians. But yes, I agree with you that he is reflecting the truth, I think, of, and so I guess that was also my issue too, is that Asian Americans are not at a point right now, like culture, like in mainstream media, you know, in the mainstream conversation, where being the bigger person is saying, hey, look, I get it. You've had some misinformation. You're not educated about this, but I forgive you. we're not at that point. Like, at least from my perspective, we're at the point that actually being the bigger person is actually speaking out against it, because too many times we have let everything slide. That is why we're in that, exactly what you're saying, the condition that we're in, where it's okay to make fun of us, because too many times we have said, no, it's okay. We'll just keep our heads down and like stay quiet and let you do your thing. That's fine. Just don't attack us. You know, too many, that is what the norm is. So actually being the bigger person is stepping outside of that norm and saying, look, that isn't okay. Like, I'm an Asian American, and for once I'm going to stand up for myself, as opposed to I'm an Asian American and I'm going to do what I've always done and just say, yeah, you're all right. You're good, dude. We're cool. Because that has really not done us too many favors in the media historically. So that's also problematic, is that it's not the same, like, for every single group. You know what I mean? Like, racism is racism across the board, but Asian Americans have a very specific kind of racism that has been allowed far too long. And I think being the bigger person is actually being honest about that and actually standing up against it, because not a lot of people do. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, I agree.